Hello, I'm Norm Marshall, and I'm talking to you about why freeway expansion does not reduce congestion. No one likes freeway congestion, and the common response is to think that we need more freeway capacity. We need wider freeways, more freeways, but this never seems to solve the problem. We've known why freeway capacity expansion doesn't work for a long time. In 1992, Anthony Downs published a book called Stuck in Traffic, Coping with Peak Period Traffic Congestion. And the framework he developed is called the triple convergence, that during peak periods, traffic congestion is inevitable because drivers will compensate for capacity increases by 1, shifting routes, 2, shifting the time of travel, and 3, shifting the travel mode. Let's look at a simple case study here in Little Rock, Arkansas. To the north of the river, we have North Little Rock, and to the south, downtown Little Rock. And we're looking at a short trip made in the morning peak hour from the regional transit provider's office where it says start to the Clinton Presidential Library where it says end. And I enjoy looking at these cases in Google Maps because Google now has a lot of access to real-time traffic information, so they know where the roads are congested and for how long. And in this case, we can see the congested points are in red. And when we ask Google to find us the best route, it looks at 3 different routes. And the 2 to the east, the one in the center and the one to the east, both are marked as 8 minutes. The one to the west was slightly longer. But what's interesting here is the eastern route uses I-30, an interstate highway, for a very short distance, and the central route just stays on the local streets. Now, because the interstate highway has a much higher posted speed limit, the way that each route has 8 minutes is by adding congestion to the freeway route. In this case, the freeway congestion is both at the on-ramp, where we're getting on there, going southbound, and also as we approach the access, there's also backups. So what happens here is the traffic backs up and creates the same travel time on both. If we were to expand this road, which is proposed and being studied, we would expect to draw even more traffic off the local streets and to have congestion appear somewhere on that freeway route. And while we talked about the triple convergence earlier, we can actually expand this now to a quintuple convergence, the first one being shifting routes, which we've talked about. The second one is where we shift our time of travel to avoid the peak congestion. Third is shifting travel mode. That's not going to work here in Little Rock because our transit vehicles are on the same streets. 4 is shifting destinations. So at some point, if all the bridges became so congested, we might think, do we really need to make that shopping trip across the river, or can we satisfy without going across the river at all? And in the long term, a very important part of the convergence is through shifting land development. And here's a prominent example from the Washington, D.C. area, Montgomery County, Maryland, in the late 80s and into the 90s. They widened I-270. And in the 5 years after the construction began, there were 8 times as many houses approved in the study area as there were before. So it really had led to this housing boom. And within a few years after construction, the traffic volumes were exceeding the levels forecast for a distant year. And some people call this build it and they will come. All of these quintuple convergence factors we can group together under what researchers call induced travel. And there's been many studies of induced travel which have found that it's real. Researchers at University of California reviewed all the studies, and their conclusion was in congested metropolitan areas, adding new capacity to the existing system of limited access highways is unlikely to reduce congestion or associated greenhouse gas emissions in the long run. So why don't we learn the lessons about induced travel? We have a lack of understanding of complex systems. We have bad computer models, and we seem to fail to learn from history. But more cynically, ignoring induced travel justifies expansion, which many of the agencies want to do. This presentation is one of 6 that I prepared on this topic. The second one, we will be looking at other case studies of where expanding freeways has failed to reduce congestion. And then 3 and 4 look at modeling, both bad modeling and good modeling. And 5 and 6 look at what we can do to address freeway congestion. I'm Norm Marshall. Thank you for watching and listening.